Good morning. It is Wednesday, the 11th of February. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, EU leaders are bickering over how to save the European economy on the eve of a crucial leaders' retreat taking place here in the Belgian countryside. French President Emmanuel Macron has declared this as a moment of truth for the EU, saying it's time to issue more common debt. But Germany's Merz is pushing back. Meanwhile, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is set to address MEPs in Strasbourg today before travelling to Antwerp for intense talks with business leaders about the challenges facing European industry. To get up to speed, let's cross now to Strasbourg, where our EU News editor, Maria Tadeo, is standing by for us. Good morning, Maria. So, a packed agenda for Ursula von der Leyen. What is the latest there in Strasbourg, and what should we expect for the next 2 days?
Well, yes, good morning, Maeve. It is a packed agenda because of the summit taking place tomorrow. The entire European universe gravitating around this informal retreat happening on Thursday on competitiveness with, of course, Mario Draghi in attendance. When it comes to the head of the Commission, yes, she will participate at the summit in Antwerp. Then she will previously address the European Parliament in Strasbourg, but the focus very much on that summit with the heavyweights of the European industry in Antwerp. Already that location tells you a lot. This is a very pro-business friendly city, obviously a port city, a great history of trade and commerce, and that is really the zeitgeist now for the European economy. Last year also, Maeve, remember there was a very similar gathering which led to the Antwerp Declaration of 2024, which suggested immediate relief and action for the European industry. Ever since, we've seen a very aggressive agenda of simplification to cut red tape, to cut costs for companies. And we expect that in the meeting today, the European industry will reiterate those points. But also remember, in a letter published on Monday, the head of the Commission promised to double down on the simplification of regulation. She also said the Commission plans to introduce a tool that will tackle gold plating. Remember, the industry hates this. Is the idea that national member states put on even more regulation on European directives. And then, of course, she also said integrate the single market. The IMF believes that the internal barriers of this market may represent a 45% tariff on goods, 110 on services. So a lot going on into this meeting with the industry. They have the influence over the policymakers. They have the year of the leadership. And it's not coincidence that this is happening a day before a political summit.
Indeed, and meanwhile, those battle lines, Maria, are being drawn up ahead of tomorrow's summit. We've seen France pushing for Eurobonds. The German are saying no. What is the middle ground? Will they even find it?
Well, that's a very good question, because in anticipation to this retreat, and remember, when Antonio Costa, the head of the European Council, spoke to us exclusively 2 weeks ago, he said the goal of the retreat is to really now establish clear political guidelines in the way forward. And that means the Draghi report, but also the Letter report. And Emmanuel Macron yesterday in an interview, which hopefully we can put up on the screen, he told the European press that he believes this is now the time for Europe to come together with a joint borrowing capacity. That is, of course, Eurobonds, joint debt. For many countries, this is a complete red line. The Germans, and you say, have already said no. The Italians sided with Berlin, saying the focus should be on the simplification of rules, or really putting the automotive at the center of a lot of the industrial policy in Europe. So tomorrow, it should be an interesting meeting. But of course, the cat is now out of the bag, because the French president has now put this and stated this clearly on the table. The European Union cannot wait any longer. The debate about more joint debt needs to start now. So all of this very political, and to debrief this very packed agenda, I am joined from Strasbourg by MEP Saskia Bremont. You're an MEP for the Greens. Obviously a very packed agenda here in Strasbourg. We really feel a sense of urgency, but I want to pick up on a vote yesterday. The European Parliament finally agreed to implement and go ahead with the US-EU trade deal. Some would say that was a total capitulation, that deal. Are you happy with the result?
Indeed, I'm part of the ones that say it's a total capitulation. There is obviously a willingness from the von der Leyen majority to show signs of appeasement with Trump. I'm not sure this is the language he understands. There was a majority, I think, in favor also in the parliament to activate the anti-coercion instrument that the EU has to reply to such commercial trade attacks from third countries, and we wanted it to be activated, to show some teeth also to the different attacks and threats given by Trump and its administration. So I think the current answers are indeed a bit too weak from the EU side, and to link it with the other debate, like the industrial debate, it's high time for the EU to give preferences to its own industry, to think about eventual tariffs, additional tariffs towards the US, for instance, and also to take back the compass of the Green Deal to really put the competitiveness hand in hand with sustainability.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, because you say Trump has been very aggressive on Europe and we have been very weak. To me, it seems that after Greenland, however, something has changed. Isn't there a contradiction between, implementing this deal and saying we'll put it ahead with conditions, but also the fact that, with Greenland, with tech regulation, the Trump administration has shown repeatedly that they do not see this as a done deal. They will come back for more concessions. So why approve this deal now? I'm very confused.
I think it's more the narrative of showing unity at EU side in terms of answers. But indeed, I'm also confused about the current reply, because indeed there is this kind of escalation since Trump somehow is less vocal about Greenland, but I'm pretty sure is not giving up. He has an international agenda. It's pretty clear in its security strategy as well. And I think Europeans have to think about them now and take their own faith into their hands.
So you say we've got to think about Europeans, we have to think about ourselves. To go ahead without the United States, however, that would completely change the playbook since the Second World War. Is that warranted now, because you say the US, it's no longer an ally? It's time to say, at the very least, it's a rival at times. Can it be an enemy to European values?
I'm not saying it's an enemy, and we should not escalate. This is not the question. I think we have to show teeth, as I said, and give appropriate answers when the EU is somehow attacked, or if other countries deliver us a trade war, be it the US, be it other countries. We also have other allies to work closer and hand in hand with. I'm thinking about Canada, I'm thinking about Latin America, I'm thinking about Asian countries, Japan. The EU has other allies, has to develop and still rely on multilateralism, but work with allies. And I'm not saying the US is becoming an enemy. I think Trump obviously has a huge problem with other continents, including Europe, and he wants to show that Europe is weak. It's up to us Europeans to show that the Europeans and Europe is not weak. It's also a powerful continent that has a lot of economic possibilities and strong industry. And
so talk
we
about
see it today with the summit.
Let's talk about the industry. The industry is now really at the core of everything. The head of the Commission has said we're going to cut down paperwork. We're going to make it easier to do business. Is that the right approach? Would you say, yes, let's give the industry what they need? They take priority over everything else now.
Of course, we need a strong European industrial policy, but again, it goes hand in hand with the Green Deal, with sustainability standards.
The Green Deal, I don't hear it anymore. Nobody even talks about the Green Deal. It's gone. People talk about a clean industry.
And that's the huge issue. I think the Draghi report showed it clearly. We need simplification. We need also a vision for Europe, make our industry stronger and invest. I don't see the investments today, and that's also highly needed at EU level to really decide to invest in our industry, but also to green our industry. Otherwise, we will be the old continent. Definitely, the Chinese invest, other continents invest in their transition, and Europe is now giving up on its climate and ecological transition, but it's a condition for our competitiveness.
Well, thank you very much for that. And of course, Maeve, the focus, of course, is on the investment, but the question is, how do you pay for it? And that's one of the big topics that will come up tomorrow. What is the financing and who's going to pay? Is this private sector money, or is there now a path for joint debt and we go back to public money?
That always seems to be the million-dollar question. Maria Tadeo, thank you so much for that. And also to the Belgian MEP Saskia Brikmont from the Greens. And as you heard there, it is a nail-biting time for the European Union as leaders scratch their head about how to move forward. Ahead of that leaders' gathering tomorrow, our Jakob Jannis has been reading between the lines of Ursula von der Leyen's letter.
Hey, do you like receiving letters? Ursula von der Leyen just wrote one to all 27 EU leaders. And it goes like this. Where a lack of progress risks undermining Europe's competitiveness, we should not shy away from using the possibilities foreseen in the treaties on enhanced cooperation. Confused? Don't worry, your reporter also struggled. But in simple words, it's all about new European super speed club. So let's break it down. In her letter, von der Leyen is essentially saying, if we cannot agree now as 27, let's break the taboo and move forward in smaller groups. And the so-called enhanced cooperation will allow a group of at least 9 countries shift up a gear without waiting for the others. And those considered troublemakers, they can keep pumping the brakes, but they are about to be left in the rearview mirror. But buckle up, because that's not the only bold idea. Emmanuel Macron is pushing for future-oriented Eurobonds, so a massive common debt for strategic projects. And this is already happening with the 90 billion euro Ukraine loan, which is bypassing Hungary, Czechia and Slovakia. And this also shows not everyone is ready for a Hamiltonian moment. But the trend is clear, and the EU is finally trying to reform itself. In September, von der Leyen suggested limiting veto rights, which are often used by some member states to derail collective action.
It is time to break free from the shackles of unanimity.
And the motivation is clear too. Because if Brussels doesn't learn to drive fast, it will not just be overtaken, it might end up in the scrapyard.
Jakob Janis reporting for us there. And as you heard earlier, MEPs are in Strasbourg this week and they're also voting on new stricter anti-asylum laws. That will make it legally easier to deport asylum seeker hopefuls to countries outside the European Union. The new laws foresee more cooperation with foreign states, marking a pivotal change to a tougher European stance on asylum. The EU Commissioner for Migration, Magnus Brunner from Austria, expressed his stance in the European Parliament.
We have a clear strategic vision for the kind of migration policy we want for the European Union. We want a union where migration is safe, is legal, and most of all, under control. And we want swifter, stronger, and more effective returns also. That is one of the missing pieces we still see. And I think it is time to turn this around and make sure that, as a rule, irregular migrants leave the European Union. Without this, our policies, I think, are not credible.
Magnus Brunner there, the Austrian Commissioner for Migration. And for more on this, we can turn to Euronews journalist Eleonora Vasquez, who's been following the story for us. Good morning, Eleonora.
Good morning, Maeve.
Good to have you with us. Just tell us more about these 2 votes in the Parliament.
Yes, Maeve. I mean, they were very important votes of the European Parliament yesterday. One about the list of countries considered safe for the European Union, and the other is the concept, what it does mean to be a safe country so migrants can be returned there. So Egypt, Bangladesh, Colombia, Kosovo, India, Morocco and Tunisia has been defined safe country in this list. That might change. So this doesn't mean that all the people coming from this country will be automatically returned, because the asylum application is a personal application. But at the same time, they will have less chances to get the asylum in Europe. And as you said, there is a reduction of access to asylum in the European Union.
OK, and we can read more about that, of course, on Euronews.com. But you also broke an exclusive story this week with our colleague Vincenzo Genovese about the European Commission's frustration with the Spanish government for granting asylum to 500,000 undocumented migrants, mostly from South America and the Caribbean. Tell us more about this.
Yes, on this, I want to clarify something. I think the Commission has 2 different narratives that they don't really come together. So one narrative is legal pathways. We need migrants. We need these people because we have a lot of jobs and we need skilled workers and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we want to reduce access to asylum. We want to close the border. And of course, for the public opinion, these 2 narratives, they don't go together. So what happened and what is doing Sanchez is one of the 2 narratives. But the predominant narrative narrative inside the Brussels corridor, from what I learned with my colleague Vincenzo Genovese, is that they want to keep a high-level narrative on closing the border. And of course, what he did, Sanchez, also in terms of narrative, because he is showing a lot that he is making the migration as a good opportunity for everyone. So this is what he is saying is disturbing Brussels corridors.
Okay, good example of the awkward phone calls between Brussels and the various capitals on that topic of migration that we've been covering, of course, for many years here on migration, and of course, or on Euronews, and of course on that pact. Nora Vasquez, thank you so much for your reporting and for joining us here this morning on Europe Today. But now, moving on from migration to the topic of defence, NATO is launching brand new military operations in the Arctic. This is a response to the serious confrontations between the US and its European and NATO allies after the US President Trump said he would, quote, take Greenland from Denmark. The mission is aimed at responding to growing threats from Russia and China in the region and is due to be announced tomorrow at a NATO defence ministerial meeting taking place. For more, we can cross straight over to our correspondent, Shona Murray, who's live for us this morning at the NATO headquarters. Good morning, Shona. Just tell us more, please, about this mission.
Well, as you said there, Maeve, we know that part of the resolution between the United States and its NATO allies over the fate of Greenland last month was that there would be greater enhanced security in the Arctic region and in the high north. So that's what Arctic Sentry is. Now, NATO has already had a presence there, but this is much more enhanced. This is going to be multi-domain force. It'll be using cyber, space, air, land and sea. And really what we heard yesterday from the US ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, was that they believe, the United States believes, that there already is a Chinese and Russian threat there, but this will really be about future-proofing the region. It's likely to be launched tomorrow at that NATO Defence Ministerial meeting here, but that hasn't been completely confirmed. But that's really the idea, that it would really sort of start getting into action as soon as possible as part of that agreement. Now, take a listen to NATO's top general, Alexis Grinkovich, during the week speaking about Arctic Sentry.
We did talk about Greenland. We talked about in the context of the Arctic and the increasing need for the alliance to pay attention to security in the Arctic, given the continued Russian presence and increasing Chinese presence that's there. I think it's been reported widely that we're doing some planning now on a new Arctic mission called Arctic Sentry that has not kicked off yet, but we're in the final stages of planning for that.
General Alexis Grinkovich there, a reporter speaking to the press last night. And Shona, of course, as you said, this is happening as part of that defence ministers meeting taking place tomorrow. But we're hearing that the US Defence Secretary is not showing up. Can you tell us why, and how are allies feeling about this? Are they annoyed?
Well, Pete Hegseth, the US Secretary of War, was due to show up, obviously. He announced a few weeks ago that he wasn't. And initially there was sort of head scratching because, remember, in December, Secretary of State Marco Rubio also didn't show up to his meeting of foreign affairs ministers. But what we will have is a Elbridge Colby, who's deputising for Pete Hegseth, who is the Under-Secretary of War. And what I've actually heard is that he is set to reassure allies that the United States will maintain a high level of troops across NATO territory in Germany and Italy and the eastern flank. So that was a real concern for NATO allies since the Trump administration came into power. Elbridge Colby himself is seen as sort of a hawk, a hardliner. He's been trying to push the Trump administration to withdraw troops from NATO. So that will be quite reassuring. So any concerns that allies had about Pete Hegseth not showing up, that should allay them. What I've heard is that he will talk to them about that tomorrow. It also coincides with major changes within the senior command in NATO, where the United States is removing itself from some joint force commands, making European countries like the UK, Germany, Poland and Italy take up some of those responsibilities. So the idea really is that NATO is burden shifting from the United States to Europe. Maeve?
OK, Shona Murray, thank you so much for that live update from the NATO headquarters just outside Brussels. And for more of Shona Murray's reporting from NATO today, do visit Euronews.com or for any more information on any of the stories that we're covering for you. But that does bring this edition of Europe Today to a close. Thank you so much for your company. As always, we'll be back tomorrow bright and early. Tune in to find out more about that summit taking place. See you soon, though, on Euronews.